I'm at Broadband World Forum in Amsterdam. I'm here with Julie Kunstler from Omdia. Julie, thanks for joining me today. Good to see you at an actual show and be out on the road. You've been tracking PON developments obviously very closely, and especially what's happening in the transport side for 5G. It's could potentially play a big role in that market, couldn't it?
Absolutely. So we're seeing a number of operators who have actually deployed PON networks specifically for 5G small cell transport. So they have nothing else to do with PON. They're not using PON for residential. They're using next-gen PON solely for transport. We're seeing some who are evaluating, preparing their PON networks to also support transport. And then we're seeing some operators that are at the very beginning of considering how to use their PON networks to support transport. The transport costs, like mobile front haul, mobile back haul, of 5G small cells is a major concern. You know, this is something that Omdia tracked in surveys. That cost is major as 5G will be supporting much more traffic. So operators are looking at how to reduce those costs. Can you use the point-to-multipoint network of PON to really handle small cell densification? The topology is a good topology. And then it's also very low power. Yeah. So low power consumption, which plays into the going green efforts that many operators have.
Yeah. And is there a kind of good alternative? I mean, I guess we're coming from a world where 4G has been provided partly on things like microwave technologies and point-to-point, but you know, if we look at that sort of 5G transport opportunity, I mean, is there anything else really in the mix that they could use to address that?
Well, point-to-point and microwave will also exist in the 5G world, but if you think about pulling fiber, point-to-point fiber, to every single small cell. I mean, one of your issues is how do you terminate? Yep. You know, you'll have massive amounts of space consumed with point-to-point fiber terminations in a central office. Okay. So the point-to-multipoint topology, you know, really diminishes the footprint that you have to have, the amount of space you have to have. So that's a huge benefit of PON.
And this is where a lot of the efficiencies, I guess, and the green story kind of comes into play to some extent as well.
Yeah. So the way one operator described it is you need a football stadium for point-to-point terminations in a crowded environment, whether it's a crowded city with lots of high-density apartments and apartment buildings, or whether it's a very large business park with a lot of businesses, or a lot of small cells. Yeah. You go to PON, and you're really significantly reducing it down to a very small section of that huge football stadium, for example.
And has this sort of taken the PON industry by surprise to some extent? I mean, were people thinking a few years ago, well, 5G comes along and we've got this massive new opportunity to serve? Or?
Well, it didn't take me by surprise, because one of the first reports I wrote when I became an analyst for Ovum at that time, now Omdia, was on the reuse of the PON network. Yep. But I saw it because, having come from a PON MAC chip company, we had begun to put timing and synchronization capabilities into the ASIC, into the actual chip layer to do this. So we saw it as part of the future. It was really a question of when would small cells really get here? Would operators be comfortable using PON? And also, organizationally, it sort of requires an operator that's in access, let's say residential access, to work with their transport team. Yep. And let's face it, not every division of an operator works well together, just like not every division in a vendor works well together. So it took a lot of it took a number of different things to come together to make this happen.
And when you look at the sort of investment side of things and your own kind of forecasts, which I've talked to people a little bit about here, quite a lot of uptick in spending on broadband equipment, but how much of that is being driven specifically by 5G and transport on that side of things, as opposed to other things that you would use these technologies?
Well, the cost of transport is a huge concern, and plays into that. But then, if you look at let's say an integrated operator, and by integrated, both fixed and mobile, and let's say either further integrated that it's the same engineers who are working on how to handle transport in 5G and how to do residential broadband. They're looking at a single fiber access network, or some of them call it a unified PON or unified access network, and that significantly reduces the costs CapEx and OpEx, and CFOs and CEOs are very much looking for that type of reuse of network assets. You know, it can save a lot of money and improve return on investment.
Yeah. Which is the big the big acronym ROI.
Yes, very much so.
Well, thanks very much for joining me, Julie.
Thank you. Bye-bye.